Hi, Carl here for ProAV TV, and today I'm at the Canon UK headquarters to get a sneaky first look at this, the new Canon C200. But before we take a look at the camera, I just want to make sure to say a big thank you to Canon for letting us get some hands-on time with this camera before its release. It's great to have a manufacturer willing to work with us to get you all a decent look at the camera literally as soon as it's announced. Hopefully this video is going out just after Canon's big announcement for the camera. So a big thank you to Canon for that. So this is the new Canon C200. And to be honest, is everything that I was personally hoping for in a new Cinema EOS camera. So let's work our way through what's new. Starting with what was, for me anyway, the most surprising new feature. And that's the addition of 12-bit 4K RAW internally. Canon have developed a new RAW format, which they're calling Cinema RAW Lite. It records RAW and gives you the same flexibility in post as the normal Cinema RAW on the C700 does, but at either a 1:3 or a 1:5 compression rate. It has a max data rate of 1 gigabit a second and can record to CFast 2 cards. Just to clarify, that's 1 gigabit, not 1 gigabyte. So 1 minute of footage should take up roughly 7 gigabytes. That means you'll get around a quarter of an hour on a 128 gigabyte card if you're using RAW, which is about in line, to be honest, with other low-cost RAW cameras like Blackmagic's Ursa Mini Pro, for example. Adding RAW is a very interesting move for Canon. It's the first time they've given us RAW capture internally on one of their cameras. Both the C300 Mark II and the C700 can send a RAW signal out over the SDI. And the C700 can be paired with a very expensive codecs recorder to go on the back and do 4K RAW at up to 120 frames a second. But here on the C200, you can record compressed RAW internally to CFast 2 cards. Every manufacturer's way of recording RAW is slightly different, so until I get this footage back to my desk and see what the new RAW format is like in post, I can't really give you much more detail on that, I'm afraid. So that will be coming in a future video, so look out for that. But the hope is that this could get us the best image quality possible from a Canon camera yet. Well, obviously excluding the high-end C700. Now, if you don't want to use that RAW recording, at launch the other option you get is 8-bit H.264 recording in MP4 files. So this is small 4K files ready to edit and upload quickly for fast turnaround work. This will be a long GOP codec and it has a max data rate of 100 megabits a second or 150 megabits if you're shooting in 50 or 60p. So you have the recording options for both ends of the scale, a very high-end RAW recording option or a small, easy to work with MP4 option, which makes this a very flexible camera for owner-operators. Plus, Canon have announced that XF AVC will be coming in a future firmware, hopefully in the first half of 2018. There's no specific details on that yet from Canon, but it would be great to have a more robust industry standard codec. XF AVC is a great codec and I'm really looking forward to seeing it here. You can of course pair it with an external recorder, like people often did with the C100. You would then get 10-bit 422 1080p out of the HDMI port or 4K out of the HDMI port in 422 8-bit. So by simply adding a small external recorder, you can get broadcast quality footage without having to deal with the RAW files. Now, slow motion is the other big new feature here. You can do up to 60p in 4K, which is very welcome, and up to 120 frames a second in full HD with no crop like the C300 Mark II had. So that means you can shoot continuous 120 frames a second with the full size of the sensor. The 120 frames a second is only in the MP4 mode, but interestingly, you can do 4K 60p in RAW. Your bit depth does go down from 12-bit to 10-bit, but I was very surprised to see that you could go higher than 30p in RAW. Now, I do want to spend a moment to talk about autofocus. Canon have been leading the industry in autofocus technology for large video sensors for a while now. The C300 Mark II and the C700 both have fantastic and reliable autofocus, either using face detection or you can use the joysticks on the cameras to move a square around to tell the camera what you want in focus. And then the 5D Mark IV and the 1DX Mark II took this a step further by controlling that autofocus with a touch screen on the back. So you can simply just touch the screen where you want the camera to focus. It's really simple, intuitive, and really quick to use. Now, the C200 has that same technology inside, and the new rotating screen on the top is a touchscreen. So you get the best of both worlds, the quick touchscreen control of the small cameras and the menus and joysticks of the large cameras. This is possibly the best and most controllable autofocus system we've seen in any professional video camera yet. And best of all, it's in the camera in Canon's lineup that is aimed squarely at the users who will use this autofocus the most, the solo owner-operators who have to work fast by themselves. Imagine you're filming a wedding and the bride is walking down the aisle towards the camera, or a corporate video with a presenter doing a piece to camera while walking towards you. Autofocus like this is going to be incredibly useful. And let's talk a bit about this new touchscreen. It's now up on the top like the C300 rather than on the back like the C100. In fact, it sort of resembles the FS5 from Sony. But unlike the FS5, the C100's monitor can rotate around into pretty much any position you want. It can fit nicely on the top and flip around to view from the front or from the side. It sits on the top handle, which is familiar from the other Cinema EOS cameras, but Canon have moved the XLR ports from up on the top handle to down here on the back of the body, which is nice. It keeps the top handle nice and lightweight and means you get full XLR inputs and audio controls when you don't have the top handle attached. So that's great for gimbal work, or just if you want to make the camera smaller and lighter and a bit lower profile. You get dual SD card slots, but a single CFast 2 card slot for the raw recording. And there's some nice built-in Wi-Fi functions as well, so you can control the camera from a smartphone or a tablet. It's overall a slightly smaller, boxier, traditional design from Canon. In fact, it reminds me of a smaller C700, which is quite nice. In fact, the sensor is lower than it was on the C300 and C100, which does place the optical axis of the camera at exactly the same height as on the C700. So it means you can use the same accessories from both cameras. This is clearly the design direction that Canon are heading in for the future of their pro video cameras, rather than their previous tall camera bodies. That's interesting to see. I've only got access to this camera for one day, and it's still a pre-production model, but I've tried to get as much content for you as possible in the short time that I have with it. So look out for more videos, which I will either release alongside this one or just after it. I want to take a closer look in particular at the footage and that new RAW format, and I'll also compare this directly to the C300 Mark II, as I think the C200 now sits in a very interesting place in Canon's lineup. I almost certainly haven't covered everything that you want to know about the camera in this video, so if you've got any questions, just leave a comment below and I'll get straight back to you. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.